And as the final blow was struck, the King of Shadows, the ancient guardian of Ilifan, at last was laid to rest. But in his death throes, the power of Ilifan was released, sending echoing blasts through the Fortress of Shadows. The walls were torn asunder, the stones crashing down upon the valiant heroes and their knight captain. They fled through the twisting corridors of darkness, but to no avail. The stones themselves crashed down around them, sealing them within the fortress. Leagues away, far from the Vale of Murderlane, the soldiers of Crossroad Keep, still fresh from their battle against the King of Shadows, watched the shadows over the mere drain away into the skies. The victory was theirs, but as for their knight captain, there was no trace, except for the cloak that marked the captain as a Knight of Neverwinter. Of the knight captain and the fortress of the enemy, there was nothing else left to mark their passing. And to this day, where they have gone is unknown. In the year following the war against the King of Shadows, Neverwinter quickly recovered, its city watch, Greycloaks, and even the many-starred cloaks gaining numerous new recruits. Emboldened by the actions of the Shardbearer, the ranks of the soldiers of Neverwinter swelled, becoming one of the strongest military units in the Sword Coast. Neverwinter itself became one of the safest cities on the Sword Coast. Its city watch, bolstered by the resolve of its citizens, took pride in their city and the surrounding lands, and many outlying settlements and villagers that previously only had occasional supervision gained small garrisons of their own to watch and protect them. Luskan viewed the events to the south in Neverwinter with some disappointment, hoping that the war against the King of Shadows would weaken their southern neighbor long enough to force their intervention and control of Neverwinter and Crossroad Keep. When Neverwinter triumphed, their only victory was the return of their ambassador, Torio Claven, who after several years of service revealed that she was an agent of Neverwinter, and her role had allowed her to arrest over a score of Luskan spies who had infiltrated her new home city. Bevel, led by the example of the Shardbearer, became a commander of the Greycloaks in time, finally finding the ability to lead and command. In the aftermath of the Second War of Shadow, he sought tirelessly for his fallen commander, convinced that the Lord of Crossroad Keep had survived. Shortly after the war, Dagon vanished. There were rumors of an elven ranger sighted throughout the lands of Faerun, still searching for the Shardbearer he had lost in battle against the King of Shadows. After the war, a few scattered survivors of West Harbor returned to their homes, and with the persistence common to harbor men, slowly rebuilt their destroyed village. They still make their living at the edge of the mere, a testament to their strength and character. The farm of Chandragiro was left abandoned for some time, yet it never fell into disrepair. During the harvest season, the people of Highcliff came to pay their respects to Chandragiro, who was rumored to have fallen in battle against the King of Shadows. In the years after the war, a strange tranquility settled over portions of the Mere, in contrast to the horrors that had taken place there. There were sightings of a mysterious elven female, cloaked in mist, who would lead lost travelers to sanctuary within the Mere. The identity of the woman was never known, but glimpses of her over the years seemed to indicate that she was a troubled, sad figure and looked as if she had lost someone she cared deeply about. Crossroad Keep achieved a new prominence in the coming years after the Second War of Shadow. Bolstered by the example of the Shardbearer, the Lieutenant Kana took over the operations of the keep, and with Vidal in tow, helped restore peace to the region and turn it into a major trade route. Of the Githyanki and their Lich Queen, no more was heard. Driven from the Sword Coast by the Shardbearer, it seemed as if the hunters had retreated to their citadels on the astral plane. Even the most unlearned of fools know that whoever holds such a blade shall have a long journey ahead of them, both in the realms and beyond. But that is a tale for another time. Before the Knight Captain had traveled to the Vale of Murderlane, it seemed the King of Shadow's progress had been slowed, perhaps even stopped. It was a vain hope, for barely a day after his journey into the Vale, the forces of the King of Shadow suddenly rolled across the land like a tide. There was no sign of Garius, no sign of the Reavers at the front of the Dark Armies, just a shadowy general that led the dead through town, city, and finally to Crossroad Keep itself. Without the Knight Captain to bolster the Keep's forces, Crossroad Keep quickly fell, and the soldiers were driven to Waterdeep and the surrounding lands. But there, at the unmarked ancient borders of the Ilifan Empire, the shadows stopped their advance and remained still. To this day, the line of shadow is one none will dare cross, and the people of Neverwinter live with the knowledge that there are stretches of the Sword Coast where dawn's light will never fall again. No one truly knows what came of the Knight Captain and the other heroes when they traveled to the King of Shadow's fortress, but all agree that the shadowy general that emerged must have slain the Knight Captain. For the general wore the Knight Captain's cloak and bore a silver sword that had once belonged to the Lord of Crossroad Keep. In the year following the war against the King of Shadows, an eerie quiet fell over the city of Neverwinter. Emboldened by the actions of the Shardbearer, the thieves of Neverwinter took back the docks. The merchant quarter and the rest of the city was claimed by their silent, dark law. More surprisingly, the Council of Neverwinter seemed to turn a blind eye to the crime controlling the city, and many rumored that it was only the strong hand of Axel DeVry and his ties to the former Lord of Crossroad Keep that kept the city safe. Luskan viewed the events to the south in Neverwinter with a quiet wariness, never certain if the shadows that had claimed their southern neighbor would one day come for them. After the deaths of Sidney Natal and Torio Claven, however, no Host Tower mage or scout was willing to venture south to share their fate. Bevel, crushed by the events at West Harbor and the Second War of Shadow, soon deserted the forces of Neverwinter when they were sent on a resupply mission to Old Owl Well. He is said to have made a solitary home there, still tortured by the memories of what happened to him during the war. Shortly after the war, Dagon attempted to return to West Harbor, believing that the Shadow General that led the King of Shadow's armies could be found there. His path was the correct one, but not as he intended. He was intercepted by beasts along the road south of Highcliff and brought in pieces to the Shadow General, who watched Dagon be consumed by his minions, then raised him from the dead to die again and again for his amusement. It is said that Dagon's corpse is embedded in a pillar of the dead in the Vale of Murderlane, his mouth left hanging open so the wind might whistle through it in a mockery of the song portals of Ilifan. Following the rise of the King of Shadows and his general, the Mere of Dead Men became an increasingly desolate place. The ruins of West Harbor, in particular, became a dark gathering ground for the shadows and the dead of the Mere, and the tiny farming village became a twisted shadow of the once proud dwelling of harbor men. The farm of Chandragiro was soon claimed by the wild surrounding the high cliff. Chandragiro followed the path of her ancestor, her efforts forgotten and unknown as those of Amanjiro during his time. In the years after the war, the Mere became a place of horrors, but worst of all were the tales of a ghost of a mysterious elven female who was said to have been slain by her own companions, her dying spirit twisted by the claimed lands. She is said to lure travelers to their deaths and then watch in satisfaction as they slowly drown in the depths of the swamp. The Lord of Crossroad Keep returned when the King of Shadows came to reclaim the ancient citadel. The Servant of Shadow slayed all the inhabitants she had gathered, and she used their bodies to form a new wall around her home. It is said that this beast resides there still with the shadows, where the heads of her former companions form a silent gallery around her, frozen in dark screams. Of the Githyanki and their Lich Queen, no more was heard. Driven from the Sword Coast by the Shardbearer, it seemed as if the hunters had retreated to their citadels on the astral plane. Even the most unlearned of fools know that whoever holds such a blade shall have a long journey ahead of them, both in the realms and beyond. But that is a tale for another time.